Good morning, everybody. It's 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the United States, so I guess it's time for us to get started. My name is Matthew Burgess, and I will be moderating this session, which is entitled On the Journey, Developing Templates. Before we begin, I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping details. First of all, just for your information, this session is being recorded, and you will receive an email announcement once the recordings are available. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to type them into the questions box, which is located in the GoToWebinar control panel. And we will be going through those questions at the end of the presentation. So feel free to type your questions into the question box throughout the presentation, and we will get to them at the end. The presenters for this session are Xavier Laurent and Stephen Berhold from Oxford University. Xavier has many years of professional experience in the field of digital media. He has experiences including e-learning, courseware design, different VLE support and development, web development, IT management, and creative media projects. He also has a strong academic background with a variety of teaching topics from IT to psychology, and he's an active researcher in the field of experimental psychology with a focus on memory and selective attention. Steve has worked as a learning technologist and an e-learning systems developer at Oxford University and also Oxford Brookes University, both in the UK. He has a lot of experience including designing Sakai, Moodle, and Wiki templates for teaching and collaboration, developing podcasting for teaching and feedback, designing a university-wide content management system to improve sharing of teaching resources, all linked to the VLE, and designing systems and policies to support the production of open educational resources. We're so excited to have them here to talk about templates today, and so I'm going to hand the presentation over to them. Take it away, guys.
Matt, thank you very much. Good morning, afternoon to everyone on the session. We're very pleased to be here, and we're going to show you how we've developed Sakai templates at Oxford University in the UK. We'll show you some examples of the templates and explain how we've been working with administrators, academics, and students. So just to start off, Xavier and I are learning technologists. We've recently joined the university and work in the Central IT Services Department, specifically in a group called Academic IT. So there's a picture of us. We are the Wise Guys, and Xavier will explain why we're called the Wise Guys shortly. But the picture in the circle there shows Xavier on the left and myself in front of Mansfield College, one of the colleges in Oxford. And it's one of the places we visited on one of our trips to the pilot groups on a session to get their requirements. So we'll talk more in detail about how we support those pilot groups. So a little background about Oxford. Hopefully you know some of this, but it's worthwhile explaining the context of Oxford because it really affects how we design the pages in the VLE and how it works as a structure. So Oxford's a collegiate university. There is no one building that's the university. In fact, there's 38 colleges dotted around the university that make up what is the university. The important thing to say is it's a self-governing system, so it's a federal system. So the colleges decide what they do, and that has some implications for the VLE. So they will decide whether they use the VLE, how they use the VLE, to what extent, and they're very different. So some of the ways they work are quite different. So that means we have to customize or certainly consider how they work in what we offer to them. So it's quite a complex system. The Central University is composed of many, many departments for research and teaching, administrative departments, and libraries and museums. And some of you may have heard of the Oxford tutorial system. So it's very common to have very small groups of students, maybe 1 or 2 students with a lecturer meeting regularly for a tutorial. This is supported by seminars with slides and lectures which are available to everyone. So this has a big impact on how we design Sakai. So for example, if you're going to use forums for teaching, they may not be so useful if there's only 1 or 2 students in there. Having said that, Oxford, there's more and more use of some distance learning element in the teaching. So there's actually been quite a lot of interest in using forums and Sakai for to welcome students and for socialization. So what is WebLearn and how does it fit in Oxford? So we brand Sakai as WebLearn in Oxford, have done for several years. And I mentioned I was in the central IT services department. So our job is to provide WebLearn templates and training. And the third point is really going back to what I said about the colleges being self-governing. So WebLearn is optional. We do not provide one template that everyone has to use. It's very much an opt-in system. So this means we have to listen very carefully to how each department's using or what could potentially use Sakai. And the last point really just gives you an idea of how the university's been using Sakai so far. In a nutshell, it's been using it mostly as to support teaching and learning by providing resources, by using the resources tool, which is fine, absolutely fine, and will be useful as we go forward. But we've been wanting to promote the use of the lessons tool to make the teaching more engaging, rather than having the students to try and make sense of a big lot of resources, to actually use the lessons tool as in a linear way to help the teaching process. So that's some of the background. I'd like to hand over to my colleague Xavier, who will talk a bit more about the team that's involved in the process.
Hello, good afternoon or good morning, everyone. I'm just going to go through the WebLearn team first, so you get a better idea of where we sit in. So the WebLearn team, or the Sakai team in Oxford, is comprised of learning technologists. So we have a picture of us, me, Steve, you have Jill, and far away I've got the project manager Liz there. And we have as well on the office next door, we have a team of 4 developers who will run the service, make the enhancement based on the user request or our request, for example, and they also will contribute to the code back to Sakai, to the Sakai community. As well, something worth mentioning is that in every department in the university, there are something called WebLearn coordinators. So they have some sort of responsibility into managing their local WebLearn. So for example, the faculty of history will have WebLearn coordinators, the faculty of theology as well will have, will have a WebLearn coordinator, because obviously 8 learning technologies or 4 learning technologies for such a big university is not enough. So that's why we have coordinator to help us. Now, Steve and I just started our role 6 months ago for a project called the WISE project. So why the WISE project? Our name we call the WISE Guy because we are part of the WISE project, and the WISE stands for WebLearn Improve Student Experience. Okay. It's an 18-month funded project by IT Services, so we are already 6 months in. And the aim of the project is basically to support the departments and fast-track the development of their WebLearn presence in order to achieve enhance student digital experience, as well the staff, for example. So that's a project. Some of the aims of our templates. So we are here to talk about templates, designing templates in WebLearn, and what we come up with is that some guidelines. Steve mentioned before they used in Oxford, they used to use the resource tool a lot, and then now we move to the new ways. That was the old way. The new way is now we try to promote the lesson tool. So that means we're surfacing the content to students, for example. And then when we design a template, we're looking at consistency. We're looking at avoiding too many clicks for students. We want something easy for students to find information, because with the resource folder, it was very difficult to find information. We want easy to use, easy to update, and we are also looking at the best practice for usability. So we're working on Sakai 10. We know that Sakai 11 is coming up, but at the moment we're still focusing on the usability in terms of screen size, different devices, and so on. We, as a team, especially me and Steve, are working closely with different type of people around Oxford University. We're working with academics, students, and administrators. So we mainly work with academics in terms of what do they want for their teaching space. So we know which tool they could use, for example, to enhance their teaching. Maybe some of them want to use the quizzes, some of them want to use assignments. So we work closely with academics in such a way. We work with students. Students are mainly involved in usability testing. So we're going to do some usability testing on our template actually next week. We'll have about 8 students coming to do some testing. And we also work with administrators. So administrators are sort of the gatekeepers of the WebLearn, where they decide mostly about the structures of their WebLearn content, the role, the permissions, who's got access to this, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, to move on to the next slides, we have, when we go and see a department, so for example, we have a department who wants to have their project, sorry, their WebLearn updated, or a new WebLearn site, for example. We've been working already with 8 departments. We've got about 16 departments to go through with this project. We gave them this role and the responsibility, which is highlighted here. We have different phases, and in every phases we specify our role and what we ask them to do. Okay, so we know where we stand. So we have different phases. We gather. So the first phase is we will go and gather the requirement of the faculties. So we sit down around the table and discuss their needs and look at the whole site. Then we come back and we design a prototype. Once they agree with the prototype, we build it a little bit more, and then we ask them as well to implement, to upload content, to, for example, provide images, PDF file content, and so on, to populate the site. Once it's all sorted, we launch it. We will evaluate it with student usabilities, and also because it's a project, an 18-month project, we kind of support them afterwards, after the launch of their site. And these slides is a bit the way we've kind of worked so far. Is we try to what I call it squeeze as much Sakai as we can out of the box. So an example is, for example, in our templates, we've developed boxes, and we try to find boxes in a CK. I don't know if you know the CK editor, but in one of the editor in WebLearn, there is way of doing boxes which were already out of the box. So we didn't want to do any custom codes. We didn't want to get involved into the CSS design and changing everything. So we try to do as much as we can. But sometimes, we couldn't do it. So when it came to crunch time, we asked our developers to help us and customize Sakai with some code to progress depending on the user request. If we couldn't do that out of the box, then the developers will do it for us. Okay, so I'm passing on to Steve, who's going to talk about give you an example.
Thanks, Av. Okay, so I think you're getting a sense so far that we're moving from an old way of working, which was mainly the resources tool, into something that's going to engage the students a bit better using the lessons tool. We're very excited about using the lessons tool. A quick plug for my colleague Faway Gang's talk later on today about the lessons tool, which will be giving you some more information about how Oxford's using this tool. Okay, so let's give you a practical example of the history faculty. This is one of the first faculties we've worked with, and we've learned quite a lot about the whole process of developing Sakai within a large university. They were great, actually. They had done some thinking already about how they wanted their new site to be structured, and they in fact produced a structure diagram before we'd even got to them. So this is very useful indeed. So you can see on the screen now, this was their old site, which was fine at the time, but you can see there's quite a lot of information, and there was quite a lot of feedback that this really wasn't modern looking enough and was not making it easy for students or staff to find information. So we met with the faculty, we looked at their structure diagram, we talked about the main sort of the ways to develop, ways to move forward, and what most of those are, first of all, talking about the structure, talking about the permissions. This was really important in the pilot groups, was getting a sense of who needed access to what, which information must be kept secret from the other people. So does Group A need it, but Group B must never see that? So that was something that was quite a challenge for them, because it was challenging them to actually clarify their policy on what the information control and the access control. And also, in the back of our mind, we wanted to promote the lessons tool. So we were not just looking at prettifying their sites and making it more modern. We were very much trying to make sure that the teaching and learning aspect was at the forefront. So we want more tools in Sakai to be used for what they were designed to be used for. So the structure, just to give you an idea, Faculty of History at Oxford, they organise sites by the field of study, so undergraduate, postgraduate, then by year, and then by topic, and then by paper. So the students were, for example, if you were a student in history, you would study several papers, and the topic would be, for example, British history or world history, and that's how it will work. So history previously had quite a lot of subsites, a large amount of subsites, shall we say. So we wanted to rationalize how this was organized. And a lot of the work we did, a lot of the big thinking, which gave us the most headaches, was deciding which should be a site, which should be a subsite, and which should be a lessons page. So that was really quite interesting to come to that conclusion about, should the paper, if you look at the diagram, should the paper be a site? Should the paper be a lessons page? Should it be a sub-page? And if it was a sub-page, would that cause them problems with navigating? So complex, but quite interesting. So this was their suggestion for their page. So boxes coming up again. And this is an example of some of the finished output. So if you look at the bottom, the 3 boxes look pretty much the same. And on the page, obviously for mobile devices, it's great because it's easy to navigate. Touch interface works very nicely. If you look at the general history page at the top left, you'll see that the papers I mentioned they studied are all lessons pages on the left-hand side. So you can see GH1, GH2. You can also see the template, so underneath the image that says resources and then syllabus and materials, we've used some headings to make it easier to read. So, and they are delighted, and we've had quite a lot of feedback from a wide number of people to say this is helping them a lot. There are some challenges, and mainly, how do you get the teaching and learning aspect into this and engage the lecturers and the tutors with the new system? So each page in the template has a tutors page, and we've given them some ideas about how that could be structured. And the idea is this should be customizable to an extent by the lecturer. And we're aware we definitely need to do some more work as I mean, they've launched this site already, but we feel there needs to be ongoing support in helping their staff make the most of this. So we don't want to just leave them alone, and because I think that there is a danger that without enough support, those tutors won't engage with the software. So we're going to be doing some more staff workshops and training to help them make the most of those tools. Okay, I'll pass over to Zav now, and he'll as we come to the last sort of 5 minutes or so, Zav will show you some examples of the other templates.
Hello again. So here you go, an example of new design. So because we started with the Faculty of History was our first attempt, then they've inspired us, and we came up with this idea of boxes in the front page on the home tool mainly, with images and subtitle headings and maybe some text as well below the images. And this is an example of template, but in Oxford, it's worth mentioning that one size doesn't fit all everyone. So some people, we need some flexibility in our template. So for example, some departments may not want to use images, some departments may not want to use boxes, some departments may have a different structure, so we can't use, for example, sub-site or site. I mean, there's different way of accommodating departments, and we need to be flexible in our approach with the templates. Okay, another example of templates here, and again, for example, in this department, they didn't want to use any images, they just wanted the boxes with a bit like history, like Steve showed you, and they wanted to show you, and they have some text only on the boxes and have an image at the top. Okay, and sometimes they want, so it depends on the cosmetic, on the structure they don't want to have the synoptic tool on the side, some want to have the synoptic tool, so we need to be able to accommodate this for everyone. One thing is, as I said earlier on in my talk, is that we've tried to design a template. We tried to use what was available out of the box in the CK editors when we design the boxes. So we found some already existing code there, and then we kind of modify it at some stage. And once we got a good robust code, now we're going to pass on this code to our developer, who will then populate this in a central Sakai system, and that will be some code will be available for designing those templates, those boxes, for example, to all university members who wants to use those boxes. Okay. However, this is not perfect. We have problems. Not problems, but we have to do compromise. For example, you can see on this page the course handbooks, the induction weeks. They all refer to some of the tool on the side, or some tools or pages on the side of Sakai. So we have to hard code those links. So if we move a site across, those links needs to be changed again. So this is a compromise at the moment. We haven't found a solution for this, but we can't have everything at the same times. Now I'm going to pass it on to Steve. He's going to look at Sakai 11 and what we want to do for Sakai 11.
So looking ahead, we are planning to launch Sakai 11 in autumn of next year. So we need to ensure our designs work with Sakai 11. So we have to balance the needs of our pilot groups on the WISE project that need results now. They want to see a much better site and some realization of those benefits we talk about, but they can't wait till next year. So we have to balance the amount of work we do now with also an eye on Sakai 11 and making sure that we don't waste our time developing something that won't work with Sakai 11. So we're working more and more with Sakai 11 and looking also at the developments of the lessons tool, and particularly the multiple columns. We're very interested in that because our experience is that columns, making the design a bit more magazine-like, just is much more attractive and helps people engage with the material rather than just a long batch of text. So we're very interested in the LEAP project as well. And finally, we're still learning. We're getting more and more feedback from a diverse group of users, and there's a downside to that. It means there's more things to be done, but we're very pleased in the uptake we've had so far. The general feeling is the lessons tool is excellent, and we have had comments to the extent of, this is fantastic. You can develop Sakai as you go along. Everything's in the same place. Some really positive feedback. And finally, the element of personalized support we find very important. Obviously, we can't be around 24 hours a day. There is a limit to the project, but we feel that we can't, even if we design a very good system that looks great, we can't just give them a user guide and say, there you go, that's it. What typically we find is they'll get to a certain point, then they'll get to a barrier, and that might be use of the forums tool, or it might be trying to set up peer review in Sakai. And there's some very powerful tools in there, but some of it does need some explanation, or at least some hand-holding while they take that, for them, quite risky step of taking on a new technology. So that, I think, is the end of the presentation. Hopefully you found that interesting. There's a blog link at the bottom of the page there if you want to follow the project. And Matt, I wonder if it's, yes, we're on time, so be welcome to hear some questions if you have any.
Wonderful. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Xavier, for a really interesting and really informative presentation. We do have some questions here. Dave noticed that in the British history course that you all demoed, you've hidden the home area in favor of a lesson home area, and he wondered why that was.
So you're asking why in the history we've hidden the home. I think in that case, we have been experimenting with using the lessons tool as a home page. The reason we've done that is, I suppose, because we've enjoyed using the lessons page and the immediacy of it and the edit buttons. Some people have liked that so much, we've extended that to the home page. So we're still kind of, I think, undecided about that. It makes it consistent in the way people need to edit a page. The downside, however, is you lose the home, the little house icon, and yes, and the synoptic tools. So it's a bit of a balance between what you want and also the pilot group you're working with at all. So we're still undecided about that. But we're interested to see what Sakai 11's got in that sort of area as well. Hope that answers the question.
That's great. We also have some questions from Dave and from Shelley about the organization of your pages, how the images and how the boxes that you all talked about are arranged. Do you guys use tables to do that? How do you all do that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So you asked basically how do we do these boxes? How do we lay it out? So the quick answer is we don't use tables for accessibility, and best practice is not to use tables. So we use divs. And in fact, we took one of the HTML layout templates that's in the CK editor, and I think Zav's going to quickly show you. So we basically used, actually, Zav, if you could show SciAS or one of those rather than history, it might be easier. So the simple answer is divs with as minimal as minimal code as possible, so that they are easily editable. So Zav's just showing you the Latin American Center here. So yeah, if you just stop on one of those, just show one of the divs, can you, Zav? Thank you. Yeah, so it's a div aligned left with a margin and floated left with an image, and that's how we've done it. So obviously there's some issues about, you know, how much access. Yes, sorry, Zav's showing you where this idea came from. So we've used the content templates in the CK editor as a starting point, so the 3-column. And actually, we've been playing around with the flow of the boxes, and we've learned a few things about how divs flow if you make the screen smaller. So yeah, basically that's it. We've been working on this to set up separate divs for each box. There are different ways to do this. There is an issue also of editability and how sustainable this is. So we have had some groups that have wanted to edit the titles on those boxes, and they can do that. But obviously, getting into divs is not ideal for the average person. So, you know, I suppose it's worth pointing out that these pages are sort of landing pages or portal pages, and we kind of we do what you in this case, and it's because we've set up the portal page for them. Okay. Any other questions?
Well, I see that we do have some other questions here. Unfortunately, we may have time for just one or two more because we have some other webinars later today.
Okay.
Shelley has asked, where do you guys find the initial code that you all have started with? If that's something that you guys have created yourselves, or...
The initial code for the boxes is in the content templates for the CK editor. So as I've just shown you now, on our instance anyway, if you go into the CK editor, if you look for the source button to the right, there's content templates. I'm not entirely sure whether you will have exactly the same as this because we have our own instance of Sakai here. By all means, if you want to email us off after the session, we can find out some more information for you, or send you some code if you'd like it. So that's where we started from, yeah.
That's great. And if people do have other questions, because we obviously do have some other questions that we will not be able to get to here, unfortunately, is it okay if people contact you all via email? Is that something you guys can welcome?
Yes, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. It'll be very interesting to hear from people.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys again so much for taking the time to show us what you all are doing with templates at Oxford. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to hearing more about what you guys are doing and working with you all in the future.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.